Welcome back everyone to Board Game Breakdown. I'm Christopher Solomon here with another video, and today we're going to be looking at the Euro game Tiletum. Before we get started, just to let you know, this is a fairly long video, so if you're looking for a shorter, more condensed video, you can check out our burst version. It's about 3.5 minutes long. Click this link here for that if you just want a quick understanding of what Tiletum is and how to play it. But if you want to stick around, we'll actually go through a full setup and a full round implementation and just go through the whole thing here. We will not be discussing solo play. I really love the solo version, but I think that needs its own video. So if you're interested in that, leave me a comment, message me, let me know if you'd rather see a video with the solo mode, and I'll get that worked on and put up. All right, so Tiletum just came out in 2022, so it's pretty new. I've only had it now for a month or so, but it's really become one of my favorites. It's pretty typical Euro in that there's a lot of things going on, that there's a lot of ways to score points. The main gist is that some die will be rolled, and you'll grab them up from over here to decide which action you'll take, and then you'll be doing things on this map of the European continent. You can put pillars out and help build cathedrals. You'll be moving a merchant around to different cities to participate in fairs. You'll be trading resources back and forth, and all that will take place over 4 rounds. So it's really cool. It has a really nice mechanism as far as how you pick the dice out. So make sure to jump over to the action phase if you want to check that out. I got some chapters laid out down there in the description if you want to bounce around. But before we go any further, just want to say please subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can check out any of the new videos. You can also check us out at boardgamebreakdown.com. We put up a lot of text reviews and obviously links to our other videos. We're also on Mastodon and Instagram. So just come find us, chat with us, leave me any comments that you might have. Let us know what you think. And without further ado, we will jump straight into the video for Tiletum. All right, welcome to the setup of Tiletum. You can see right off the bat that this is quite the table hog of a game. There's actually quite a few resources and things off of the screen that you can't see, but I'll make sure to show them to you when they are important. And if there are things that are hard to see from this angle, I'll do some overlay things in post-production so that you can see better what I'm referring to. You will also see that I've already put out a lot of things. I will make sure to go over all those, but as I didn't want this whole video to basically be set up, I've already done a little bit of the work here for us. So what we're going to concentrate on first is this main board, basically this area right here, and then you have your individual player mat down here. And I am going to be setting this up as if we have 2 players, though I will only set up the 1 player mat just for sake of space. But I will let you know when there are little things that you might have to change if you have more players. I'm not going to touch on any of the solo game as far as setup or anything like that in this video. It's pretty robust, so I might do a video of that later on. All right, so let's jump right over into this spot in the top left. So we're talking about right here. And what you will do first is you'll grab this little wheel here that's got different values and different die amounts on it, and you are going to place it here, and you can put it in any direction that you want with each die facing one of the little wedges here. There are also additional wedges that you can place down over these to kind of randomize what the action spaces are each game, but for this setup we are just using the standard board. You will also have spots like this that are for your bonus tiles. A bonus tile has a back like this, like the little compass rose on it. So there's lots and lots of bonus tiles in this game. We'll talk about those later on in the gameplay, but you'll take out 6 bonus tiles and place 1 in each of the little spots. Just do that randomly. Let's move down to this section here. You have character tiles, so the backs of them have this little George Washington looking dude. That's not George Washington, but that's the only old white guy I can think of. So you'll have a lot of those, and you just shuffle them up and put them there. And then you are going to flip over and fill in the 5 spots here. So we'll just do that very quickly. You'll see they have different types of characters on them. Sometimes they will be the same, sometimes they will be different. You'll see that this one and this one are the same. We'll get into what that actually means in the gameplay. If we move down a level, you have a similar type of tile, but this is called a contract tile. So it has this like deed looking manuscript thing on the back. So you'll select those, shuffle them up, much like we did the character tiles, and then we will randomly put out 5 of those. Now what you might see is that when we play, there's these type of things. They're called crests. They might be on the backs of bonus tiles. They might be on the back of contracts. So when you set the game up, and more importantly, when you break the game down, you do need to focus on the backs of these tiles to get them separated, because if you just focus on this side, you might mix them up in the wrong spots. We will also take 3 bonus tiles out of the bank and sit them face down right here. And this is going to help us keep track of our rounds. We actually play 4 rounds, but the 4th round always has this pre-printed amount of victory points. So you're going to place that here on the king track. That's what this little thing is. We'll talk about that when we get into the actions. You also have 6 corruption tokens that have just like a coin on one side. I'm not going to flip them over just yet, but you'll place them right there, and then you're going to just put 3 out in these kind of shadowy areas. All right. You also see some character, player tokens. I'm going to talk about that last. So that pretty much takes care of this left side of the board. Let's move over here to the right side. And let's talk about this map here first. So there are a lot of towns on the map. So right here where there's a lot of activity happening, that's Tiletum. But you see various other places on the map. And the most time-consuming part of the setup is probably getting these cathedrals set up. So I'm going to grab this stack and show them. So this cathedral happens to have 3 different little tokens, and you'll see a 9, a 5, and a 2 victory point. So what you basically have to do is get all the cathedrals separated and then stacked up with their highest value to their lowest value, and then you place them around the map where you see that same cathedral picture. So some towns don't have cathedrals, like Verona, so you don't have to do anything there, but you will place these all around the board where they are supposed to be. You will also have a construction token like this. The back of it has a little cathedral on it. You'll shuffle all those up, and then you'll just place them around the board where they're supposed to be. I do want to note that you do have one like this that's an X. So one cathedral will be given that, and that basically means that you cannot build that cathedral during the game. So there's always one cathedral not being built. You'll see that you have plenty of bonus tiles laying around. So there's spots around the map, and you will just randomly place bonus tiles there. You also have places like this that say 3+, and some that say 4+. That's for your player count. So if you're playing with 2 players, you're just going to leave those blank. There is also bonus tiles themselves that have 3+ and 4+ on it, that if you're playing 2 player, you'll separate those and just toss them in another bag. So I've already done that off camera. All right, so you've got your map here, you have your cathedrals and your bonus tokens. The next thing to do is fill in this spot up here. So you'll see right here that Tiletum is printed on the board itself. So that is always the first city where a fair takes place. And this little token that has a Roman numeral 1 on it, we're going to place that at Tiletum, and that's going to tell us that that is where the first fair takes place. And a fair is basically one of the phases of a round. We'll get into that when we jump into the rounds. But now we need to decide where the other 3 fairs are going to take place. So you will have tiles like this with the same little fair token on the back. You'll just shuffle these up, and then we will draw 4 of them, and we'll place them out here. And this is going to decide where the fairs take place. And then the rest of these can get just sent away. So let's see, we have Strasbourg gets the second fair. So we'll look for Strasbourg. This like old English writing kind of makes it hard for me to exactly understand where everything is. Leipzig gets the third fair. Right there, and then London gets the fourth fair. All right, so you will place those out, and that's basically a reminder to all the players that they, if they are going to take part in the fair, they need to get to those towns at some point before the fair begins. And basically, these are going to coincide with the rounds. So the first round, the fair is going to be at Tiletum. The second fair, the third round, the fourth round. You also see these spots underneath that are printed that look kind of halfway done. You'll have these fair tiles that you will shuffle up, and then you will just draw 4 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rest of them can be put away. And so when we flip these over, we'll sit them like this. So let me put these out real quick, and then we'll talk about them. Now, there's a lot of fair tiles, so there's some explanation in the rule book about each one because they do all score differently. But you'll see like this first one, it says that you will score 2 victory points plus 5. So we have a total of 7 victory points multiplied by every basically pair of a cathedral you've built and a contract that you've made. Then in the second fair, you get 5 points plus 3 points, so 8 plus wherever you're at on the king track at the end of that round. So there's different scoring things for each round. I said in the first round at the end, you'll score this one. You'll never score that one again. So it kind of gives you a progression to focus on between the first round and the fourth round. All right, so let's take a look at the character pieces that we've got out on our character player mat, I guess I should say. So down here. So you'll be given a multitude of houses in your color. You will take 2 and you will place them in your little, we'll call this your bank. And then 5 of them will go at the top of each of these floors or rooms, I think they're called. You basically will do something in the game to trigger the ability to get more houses, as you only start with 2. Your final house is going to go here on one of the spots of Tiletum because all players start with a house in that town. So basically, you will always be able to score the points for the first fair because you have a house there, but you do have to travel to the other fairs, which we'll talk about later on. You also have columns, which your architect will use. So you put 2 over here, much like your houses, and then you're going to stack your columns on these spots right here. You'll cover all of them up except this last one. What this is going to be for is as you do contracts, you'll enable yourself to get more columns that you'll be able to then use. You also have some bonus type tiles, so you'll take all of these that are in your color and you just hold on to those until a proper time to use them. Lastly, you have your merchant, little caravan looking wagon thing, and you have your architect, which is like a little like compass. You'll place those at Tiletum. So I've kind of set this up as if we have a blue player and a green player, just so you can see the different, like how we do character or the player tokens. You also have three little discs of your color. So you decide on first player and they go here, and the second player goes on two. You stack in ascending order, I guess. First player token, then second player, third and fourth, whatever, on this 0 spot of the king track. And then you also lastly stack them on victory point 10 is where everyone starts, because there is an ability in this game to lose points at the end of each round. So you start with 10 so you can work your way backwards if that is your luck. We do have some resources, so I'm going to just show them to you real quick. So we have gold. We have these. I think they are iron. They're mostly used for contracts. We have maybe stone. These are used to build the cathedrals. We have food, which is used mostly to put characters into your little houses or inns, whatever you want to call them. You have, I think this is wool, cloth. They're also used a lot for the contracts. And then you have these little action point tokens that will help you keep track of how many points you've spent each turn. So those are some of the things that are probably off camera that you can't see. Lastly, you have 20 die in this game. You have 4 die of each color. There's 5 colors. And if you've noticed, then they match up with all of the resources I just showed you. So in a 2-player game, you're going to take out 2 die of each color, like I have here, and you're going to place them in the black cloth bag that it comes with. So we'll do that, get them mixed up. And I have my dice tower down here that I built, so nice custom made. It took me a lot longer than I probably should have to build this, but hey, it's kind of cool. And no one else has one like it because it's mine. So I like it, and I get to use it for games like this. So we're going to have this out so you can see the dice rolls. But that is set up. So I know that is a lot. But if you're used to playing Euro games, that's probably not much different than a lot of things that, especially nowadays, that are coming out. I will grab some starting resources. So green player gets 1 gold and then 1 of each of the other resources. Any other player would get 1 of each resource and then like 2 gold, and then the next player gets 3 gold and then 1 of each resource. So we'll do that. All right, so that's it for setup. So what I think we'll do is we'll jump into the phases of the game, and we will just play basically through a round as I explain each phase and what it means. Jumping right into how a round is played, like I said, we will do it by phases. So the first part of any round is called the preparation phase, and it's going to be where we roll the die. So in the setup, we put 10 die in this bag because we are playing with 2 people. So you have 2 die of each color, but every round you're only going to roll 8 die. So that means that every round you are not going to see every type of resource come out. So you can't ever fully know what is going to get rolled. So we'll take 8 of the dice here. So 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. So I'm going to put the other die in the bag off to the side. So we have our die down here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take each die and match it up with the slot over here that has the appropriate die. And so let's just start with our ones. So we'll take this one, we'll take this one. we'll find our one and it matches up with this little slice, and we're going to stick them like so. Then we'll just work our way around. Oh, look, I have another one here. So let's put that here. We got 2. We have no 3s. We have no, well, we have a 4. We have no 5s. We have lots of 6s. All right, so I'm going to move the dice tower for a minute. If we have to roll again, I'll bring it back out, but that way we've got some more room to see. So that is the whole preparation phase. Very easy, right? It just gets our dice ready to go this round. Those are the dice that we have selected up there in the top left. So the second phase is where we start the action phase. Now the action phase is going to be the longest phase. It's going to be the one where I give you the most detail because we're going to go over each of the actions. The very first part of the action phase is to turn over your first corruption. And these corruption are going to typically be 0s, -1s, or -2s. And that is going to determine how much you go backwards on this. So we got a 0. Make sure you can see the 0. So we don't have to move these at all, but if it was a -1 or a -2, we would move forward and backwards. And eventually these are going to possibly not be on this 0 as we move up and down in future rounds. We also can flip over this first bonus tile because the winner of the king track is going to get that tile at the end of the round. All right, so in the action phase, you are basically going to choose a die from up there, and you're going to trigger that action of the slot that the die is in. So there are multiple types of actions. Well, there are 6. I guess there's 5 unique ones, and then 1 is sort of a wild. So let's just go around the circle here, and we will discuss. I'm going to skip 1 because that's the wild. We'll come back to that. But currently in our die 2 is the king track. Here where we have no die, that is to have a merchant action. Down here we have an architect action. Here we have a character action. Here we have a contract action. And then again we have the wild or a joker, which basically allows you to copy any of the other actions. So that's nice because if we really wanted to do a merchant action but there's no die, we could technically use one of these and copy that. So you're going to take turns taking a die, taking the bonus tile if there is one, doing your action for as many points as you have in your die, and then you switch turns, or the other person goes, and you're going to go back and forth until you're out of dice. And then after that, the action phase is over. So you'll see there that the action phase, that's why it takes such a long time, but it is the core part of the game. So that's why we're going to spend some time on it. Okay, so you will also possibly, I'm just going to pick this up, you'll see that not only is there a die on here, so say that's 4, there is another number in brackets, which is basically like the balance of whatever you need to get to for a value of 7. So you'll see 4 and 3 are 7, 5 and 2 is 7, 6 and 1 is 7. So what does that mean? So one of them has to do with how many resources you're going to get. The other one has to do with how many action points you're going to get. And because of the inverse situation, you basically have a trade-off. You are either going to get a lot of resources and few action points, or you're going to get a lot of action points and fewer resources. So that's a very interesting part of the game. I very much like that because there's kind of a push and pull. So what we're going to do is we're going to just start here on the architect actions, and I'm going to just pull the die, and we're going to walk through what each action does. These actions that don't have die, we're going to fool around and move some die just to pretend so you can see how each thing works. All right, so we're going to start here. So if it was my turn, I would pick up this and I would come place it right here on this spot. So you see that there's 3 dice spot. So each of us is going to pull 3 dice off of the thing. So I think I misspoke earlier. I said we would take turns until all the dice were gone. That's not true. We're going to take 3 dice apiece. So ignore that that I mentioned. And first, if there's a bonus tile like there is right here, we're going to take that bonus tile and we're going to put it into our little, I think they call that the storehouse. So you can see you have 4 bonus tile spots. If you don't have any spots left, then you cannot keep that bonus tile. But once they're in your storehouse, you're allowed to discard them and use them for their special abilities. Now, there's obviously a whole lot of different bonus tiles, a lot of different icons. I'm not going to go through all of those. That's what the rulebook is for. But just be aware that those are there and you can use them as you need to, as long as they fit into your storehouse. All right, so first we're going to look at this die, which is a 4, and it is the gray, which matches with the wool or linen or whatever. So we're going to grab 4 of those. So the die tells us how many resources we get. So we get 4 wool. And then the inverse, or the number in the brackets, 3 is how many action points we're going to get. So I mentioned in the setup, there are these little action point counters. So I'm going to grab 3, and you basically keep those and spin them here in a minute to do different architect actions, so you can keep track of what you're doing, basically. All right, so a way a lot of these actions work is there are multiple things you can do that each cost action points. So for the architect action, the first thing you can do is move your architect on the map from one spot to an adjacent spot. And so that takes 1 point apiece. So if we look up here, remember our architect is the little compass. So to move him from Tiletum to, say, Paris, we would discard 1 action point. He can move from one city to another, anywhere where there's a road, but you do have to spend an action point for each one. But if I was trying to move up to London, I'd say that's an action point, that's an action point, that's an action point. Now that would use all of my action points, but maybe I really want to get my architect to London, so it just depends on what you're trying to do. The second thing you can do is add a pillar from your personal supply to a cathedral. So there's 2 columns that we're starting out with. Remember, you can get more later, but you start out with 2. And what you're looking for is where there's a cathedral, there are column spaces. And you can have 1 column in each town that has a cathedral. So you can't like monopolize a town. Once you get a column there, you're able to help build the cathedral, get more points. There's no reason to have multiple columns in a spot that doesn't help you. So building a cathedral or building a pillar or a column costs 1 action point. Lastly, you can take a bonus tile from the town where your architect is located. So if I wanted to, let's use up my 3 points here, and we'll say, grab the points. So I'll say, well, I'm going to spend 1 point to move my architect from Tiletum to Paris. I'm going to spend 1 point to build a column, place that there. I'm going to, I could spend a point and move him again, or I could spend the point and take this bonus tile. Let's just do that, because the bonus tiles are very helpful. And also the bonus tiles do not get refilled on the board. Those bonus tiles at the wheel, they are going to get refilled every round when we do that, but these will never get refilled. So there's a little bit of a race to grab the bonus tiles So that's helpful. So I've built my column, I've moved my architect, I've used all 3 of my points. That is basically the end of my turn. So like I said, we're going to just go around the circle. We're going to talk about each of these as if green was doing everything, and then we can go from there. So if blue took their turn, let's just say blue took this off the map, then once it gets back to me, I would flip this. So now it's -2. So we would need to do that because these are going to be flipped before we take each dice. So you see we have 3 of those and we're taking 3 dice. So you see the king track starts moving back and forth quite a bit. But let's pretend we are now on to the character. So I'm just going to take one of these and we'll say that's a 5 because that's what it was supposed to be. All right, so I'm going to take a 5. I'm going to put it here. I'm going to get my 5 food. So let's just do that. And then I'm going to get 2 action points. I'm going to take my bonus, but I'm going to stop taking these because I'm going to run out of space here in a second. I think you probably get the point at this juncture that you're going to be using these bonus tiles as you see fit. All right, so there's my 2 action points. All right, so let's jump into what a character action is. So the character actions are going to have a lot to do with this row of tiles here and everything to do with your inn, I think is it called, or your houses or something. So again, there's a couple different options. One, you can spend an action point to take a character tile from the board and place it in your storehouse. So all of these you'll see cost 1, but you're not going to take that and put it directly into your inn. You're actually going to spend a point. So we'll say we discard this and we want to take, I'll take her. So she is going to go into the storehouse. We are going to refill that character. All right. Now, if I wanted to, I could spend my other point and I could get another character and put it in the storehouse. But another option is to spend a point to discard all character tiles and then basically put them back out. So you'll see this denotes that you can refresh. So I could spend this refresh, but that wouldn't have any more points. Lastly, you can spend 1, 2, or 3 action points to move a character from your storehouse into the appropriate floor of your inn. So if you look here, this floor takes 1, this takes 2, this takes 3. So I have 1 left. So I would spin this and I would take her and I would be allowed to put her on any of these first floors. Now, there are some different reasons why you would want to put them in different places. The main thing is once you place her down, let's say we just put her there, you can never put any more of this lady that works on the king track stuff in any other rooms. So maybe I'm okay just having 1 of those because maybe I'm not going to worry about the king track all that much. I might want to stick her in one of the floors or the rooms that only have 1 floor. If I really like these kind, then I might want to put her down there because I'm going to only be able to stack on that 1 room the people that look like her. Once you place it in there, you are going to evaluate whatever is in the top left. So for her, that's 1 on the king track. So I would get to move my green space up 1. And you also get, once you have filled up these different columns, I get to take this house and place it into my thing. So if you're going to get houses, which are going to allow you to put them on the board with your merchant, to get more, you're going to need to be filling your rooms up. So you can start to see how these different actions have quite a bit of interaction. You can't somehow do merchants and ignore the character tiles. You can't build architect columns and ignore these because you're going to run out of pillars. So I like how all of them have this kind of synergy. If you wanted to place it in floor 2 or 3, you would just need to spend that many action points. There is this situation down here. So what that means is these crests that we talked about. If you ever bought a crest or got one from a bonus tile, and you were to place it here, then you get, and you have to pay that amount of food, so 2 food, 3 food, all the way up to 6 food. You would place that there, and then you would actually trigger this, and you'd get something up here. But that's actually a little bit, you get to do that after the action phase is done, or kind of at the end. So we'll go into more detail then. All right, so the other person would take their turn. We would flip over this. So 2, so 1, 2, 1, 2, and we would move on. So let's now jump over here to the contracts. So let's say I take the 6, put the 6 here. That color is the stone. So I'd grab 6 of the stone, put them over here. The inverse obviously is just 1, so I'd only get 1 action point. I'm going to grab a couple action points just so you can see how this works. I think you probably understand by now, because we got 6 resources, we only get 1 action point. But contract actions. So much like the character actions are doing a lot on this row, the contract actions are dealing with that row. So your options are, you're going to spend however many action points it takes to buy a contract from the board. And you see here that it's like 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. When you buy these, they don't automatically get refilled. Once your turn is over, you're going to slide them down. So the ones that stay out there longer are going to cost less. So let's just say we want to buy this one. That costs us 2 action points. So we will take the 2 and we will grab this one. Again, much like everything else we've seen so far, it has to go in your storehouse first. If you don't have room for it, then you can't buy it. So hopefully you also see that you can't just start hoarding tiles, because you're going to run out of room really quick. You gotta, when you buy the stuff or when you pick up bonus tiles, you really have to be using them to trigger these actions so you can have room for other things. But if you have points left over, then you can exchange one of your resources for a different resource. And the first time you do this, you can actually get a bonus resource. So you don't use action points to put contracts out here. That's something you do at the end of the turn. But this is basically a way to get some added resources, because sometimes the resources that you need just are not showing up on the die. So what I could do is I could say, well, I'm going to use this 1, and I'm going to trade 1 wool, and I'm going to trade it for a anvil. And because it's the first time I did this, I actually get 2 anvils. So I put 1 wool in, I got 2 anvils back. Now if at another point I could trade in something else, but I wouldn't get that bonus. You just get that the first time you do it. All right, so at that point, the other player would go, and in a normal game, the action phase, we'd kind of move on from there. But I want to go ahead and explain these other things first. So again, I'm going to jump over real quick the Joker. We're going to look at the King track here. So you would get 5 gold for this, and then I would get 2 action points. And the action points are basically strictly to move your piece on the King track. There's not much more to it. You're just going to spend those points and move however much up. So in this case, I would have 2 points, and I would say 1, 2. So that's how you're going to want to start moving that way on the King track. And then we have, lastly here, we have the merchant actions. And this is going to have a lot to do with how you're going to move to the different towns to take part in the fairs. All right, so let's just, we get 4 points, so that's good. Here, let me grab 4 action points. There's one more over here. You gotta do a lot of walking around the table in this game. All right, so we got 4. All right, so the first thing you can do is spend 1 action point to move your merchant from one city to another. So think much like we did with the architect. You can take your little wagon caravan thing, and to move it one city, that costs 1 action point. One thing you are going to keep in mind is you want to get your wagons to the other cities that have the fairs. You either need it in that city while that fair is happening, so during the end of that round, or you're going to spend action points to build your houses. So if I did this, it's to say 1, 2, 3. So let's just say I spent my 3 points. I wanted to move all the way down there because I just wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way. If I go ahead and build a house there, then I don't have to worry about having to show back up in that town during the second round because I have an establishment there. So the next thing is you can spend 1 point to add a house from your personal supply to wherever the merchant is currently located. So if I took my last action point here and tossed it there, I could grab one of my houses. Remember, it's got to be a house that you have unlocked. It can't be one of your houses there. And I'm going to place it on the spot here for a house. Now, you might notice that unlike Tiletum, that only has 1 spot. Well, it has 2, but that's a 3+. So by doing that, what I basically just did was blue can never come over here and build a house. So if blue ever wants to score the second fair, then they're going to have to move down here and be hanging out in this town when the second round ends. Whereas I could now go ahead and start moving around other places, and because my house is there, I am good to go. The last thing your merchant actions are going to do, again, is much like the architect, is you're going to be able to spend 1 action point to pick up the bonus tile where your merchant is at. So if I had another action point, I could pick up that crest. But I do not, so that would be the end of my turn. Lastly, the jokers or wilds. You'll still get the necessary resources, but the points, so in this case I would get 6 points. Walk back around here. So I get 6, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So the thing with this is almost every other example I've showed you, we've been able to say, okay, I'm going to spend 1 point to do this. I'm going to spend 1 point to do this other part of that same skill set, but a different action within that skill set. When you have the Joker, you have to spend all 6 on 1 action inside that skill set. So here, let me read what it says from the rule book, because that might make a little more sense. So it says, choose one of the other 5 actions. Spend all your action points on the options available for that action. All action points must be used to perform the same action. You cannot split them between multiple actions. So you can't sit there and split it in between the house and the building or moving the merchant, building the houses. You've got to spend all 6 on 1 thing. So the Joker can be very helpful if there are no die in that area, because like I said, you don't roll every die every round. So that could be good. And there's also Joker tiles, bonus tiles that you get, that you can use to use as like a 1 point in 1 action. Okay, so that is the action phase. Though at the end of the action phase, there are a few little extra things you can do that are called tasks. So this is technically still the action phase, but these are things that you can do multiple times. Sometimes you don't have to do them, sometimes you can't do them, but you'll always do them but you can do them at any point during your turn, but a lot of times you'll do them at the end because you need the resources that you've been getting, things like that. So the possible tasks, there are 3, I think, possibly 4. We'll see when I get through this. So you can spend 2 gold to gain 1 other resource. So if I had 2 gold, I could turn in 2 gold and I could grab a food. So it's just a way, kind of like most games, to trade in with a bank. So you're giving them 2 of something and only getting 1 in return, but you get to choose what you're getting. Fulfilling a contract in your storehouse. So I mentioned earlier when we bought this one that you weren't going to use resource or action points to put it up there. You're actually going to use a task. So this would need 3 cotton or wool or whatever, and 1, let me see if I can focus this, 1 iron. So in order to do that, I would say 1, 2, 3, 1 iron. And as a task, I could go and slide that up here. Now you have to put it in the leftmost one, but that would then get me a new column. And that one doesn't have any victory points underneath it, like that one has a victory point there. But I do get 6 victory points, so we haven't really done much of this, but I didn't get to move my victory counter up 6 points. So that is how you do contracts. So that is a task that you can do throughout your turn without having to spend any action points. You can spend food to put a crest from your storehouse. So I talked about this a little bit earlier, but let's actually pretend that I had a crest in my storehouse from earlier. You're going to spend that food amount. And in this option, I'm going to say, well, I want it in the same place where this person is. So I'm going to spend 3 food. So I turn in 5, I would get 2 back. Okay. And I would take this crest and I would put it here. Now what that's going to do is it's going to let me trigger this action, which means I can get 2 resources. So I don't really care what I get at the moment. Let's just get 2 wool. And then because I have now basically filled up this whole thing, and there's this little spot up here that tells you that you have filled this up with a character plus a crest, you now get a +1 bonus. So way back in setup, we talked about these. So you do have a +1. And so what you get to do is you get to bring your +1 over here, and you're going to place it on the spot that this type of person helps you with. So this person helps you with whatever's in this bottom right hand corner. So for her, it's the king track. So like I mentioned earlier, if I play her there, I'm only ever going to get 1 of her, and I'm only going to get this +1, but I would get to put this here. And then that means that every time I take a die from here, I'm going to get to add 1 to it. Or it might be, I'm going to check real quick because I want to make sure it's not the action points that you actually get the pluses for. So let's see. Okay, sorry. So that is action points. That is not for the resources. So in this case, I would still get 2 food, but I would have 5 plus my 1, so I would get 6 action points. So that way, I'm more powerful doing king path or king track stuff. Now, if I put some other sort of characters here, maybe these 2 people that help with the character track or the character action, if I place them in these 2 spots, and I eventually stuck a crest, boom, here, by paying 5 food, I would now get a +2. And so my +2 would come and it would sit on the outside of the character because she helps with the character track. So now, in this case, I would get 2 action points plus 2 and get 4 action points. So that's sort of how you can decide which characters you want and which rooms to put them in, because you get more of these bonuses. All right, so back to the tasks. So what we've done gold, we've fulfilled contracts, we spent food. You can also contribute to the building of a cathedral where you have a column. So way back on the very first action, we stuck a column here, but we never did anything with that. Well, now at the task time, we can actually help build the cathedral. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at this and you're going to say, okay, this takes 3 stone to build the cathedral. So let's look down here. I do have enough stone. So I'm going to just trade this in, get 2 more. So I paid my 3 stone at that cathedral, and I'm going to get 5 victory points for this. So 5. And I'm going to take the top cathedral, which is 3 victory points, and make it another 3. And I'm going to keep this cathedral here because it might come into play when we get to the fair, things like that. But now you will see that the next person who comes and builds, they'll still get these 5 points, but now they're only going to get 2 points for the cathedral. So by getting to the cathedrals first, you're probably going to score more points. Lastly, you can use the helper ability from a bonus tile in your storehouse. After resolving the helper ability, the tile is removed from the game. So that is the ability to play one of these. There are helper abilities that have to do with the different actions. You could discard that, get the ability, go ahead and use it. In that way, you can start clearing out some of these so that you have room for others. So that is all the tasks that you will take. So that would then conclude the action phase in between taking your die, taking the tasks. Everyone does it until they've pulled 3 die off. You've done your corruption. At that point, we're done, and we're going to move on with the king phase. So there are 2 steps to the king phase. So the first one is basically whoever is furthest on the king track is going to get to take the bonus tile that we flipped over earlier. So if you look here in this instance, even though I'm -1, I would still get to take the bonus tile because I'm ahead of blue. So I would take this and I would put it in my storehouse and be able to use that when the time comes. Step 2 has to do with adjusting it back to 0 if need be. So you're going to adjust the markers on the turn order track. The player who's highest on the king track becomes the first player. So in this instance, I'm still first player because I'm still the highest. But if we had something different, like let's pretend that happened. Now that blue is higher on the king track, blue is now going to get to become first player and I'm going to become second. So you'll see that's how the king track influences the different things that have to do with as far as the turn order goes. So you won't always have to be first player. You're not going to go back and forth, trading back and forth between first player like you do a lot of the times. A lot of times in games, you just take turns, but in this game, you can actually influence how that works. And then as far as resetting the king track, anyone who is below 0, so in the negatives, they get to go to 0. And the other player, if they're above the 0, they get to stay. So you'll see that blue is getting a chance to go ahead and sorry, I was looking at something real quick. I didn't actually score the point, so let's do that real quick. So after you did the bonus tile, we then score the points. So blue would get 2 points in this instance. Green would lose a point. because it's -1. Now you would reset the turn order, and now you would reset this to 0, and if you're positive, you get to stay there. Sorry, I had that backwards. I was going to score it last, but that wouldn't make any sense because you'd never get negatives. So that ends the king phase. We now have the fair phase. So each person is going to look at the round that we are in. So we are in round 1. So we're in Tiletum. Everyone gets to score this phase or this fair because they already have a house there. But if we were in, say, fair 2, we'd look down here at 2. Let's just say the green guy is over there and we ended the phase like that. Both players would get to participate in the fair because green has a house, blue has a merchant there. If the merchant, say, never made it there and it was the second fair, then only green would participate in the fair because they're the only person who has a house there. So that should make sense. But let's just look at Tiletum. We come up here, and I kind of gave you a heads up, I think, during setup, but we'll look at it again. So it's 2 points plus 5, so we have a total of 7 points, multiplied by every combination of a cathedral and a contract. So if you look at green's board, I have 1 cathedral, I have 1 contract. So it's 1 pair, so 1 times 7, I would score 7 points. Now maybe I had 2 contracts and 2 cathedrals. Then I get 2 times 7, I would get 14 points. So you can see how that works. So let's just say I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll say blue didn't get a cathedral. Maybe they got a contract, but they didn't get a cathedral. Too bad, blue. You don't get to score anything in this fair. Lastly, we have the cleanup phase. So there are a couple things you're going to do basically to get ready for the next round. Obviously, this is the last round. You don't do these things because you just go to final scoring. But you're going to, 1, spin the action wheel. So up here, you're going to take this, and there's little arrows here to let you know, but you're going to move that 1 time around. So that's nice because you don't always have to play the game. Every round doesn't, king track doesn't get stuck with 2, the 2 resource there every time. You're going to refill any bonus tiles. So if there are bonus tiles taken like these, we'd take some from the bag, we'd put them back out there. Again, you don't ever refill these bonus tiles, you're just going to refill those bonus tiles. You're going to shuffle up all the corruption tokens, which are these down here. So there was 3 not used, that's fine. Been talking a long time, my voice is going away. So you just shuffle these up, put them back, 1, 2, 3, so we don't know what they are. We're going to flip the next king tile there, bonus tile for the winner of that. You're going to get all of the dice. You're going to put them all back in the bag. So remember, you should have, in a 2-player game, 2 dice in the bag that you never drew. We'll pull all of these back out. We would get them from the green board. We get them from the blue board. We would now go ahead and let's see, rotate. We did that. Okay, so then at that point, you would grab our handy dandy dice tower. We would take out 8 more. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And just like we did at the beginning, we would take these, we'd set them up there. We'd start with the 1 player here. Obviously, I'd refill these things that I didn't do during the actual game, and we would go from there with our mindset on how do we get to Strasbourg, or maybe sometimes you don't want to score Strasbourg. Maybe we could score a lot of points for the 3rd fair, and we're kind of working towards that. So hopefully you can see from that that a lot of these actions interweave with each other. There's never really too much of being able to just totally ignore something. So as an example, again, If you're going to build cathedrals, if you want these extra victory points, then you've got to put your columns out there. But in order to get columns, you have to do contracts. So those are linked together. To get houses to put out there for fairs, then you need to fill characters in here. So there's all this like nice interwoven actions here, and but it is one of those games where you can't ever do everything you want to. You can see how very quickly your action points and resources just don't cover everything, so you do have to make some nice decisions there. At the final end of the game, there is some final scoring that takes place, and that is up here. So for every like house and column that you've got on the board, you're going to multiply them together. For every 4 resources left over, you're going to get a point. And then this is for every character plus crest that we filled up. So like in this situation, we had 2. You're going to get more points the more you fill up. So if you went heavy on your characters, then you've got a potential amount there for a lot of points. Also, on the last round I mentioned, you will not have a tile down here, but whoever's ahead on the king track will score those 4 points. All right, so I know that's a lot, but hopefully I broke that down in a way to basically hopefully teach you how to get from the beginning of a round to the end of the round. You rinse and repeat 4 times, and that's the game. So if you are interested in solo mode, let me know in the comments, because I really do like the solo mode, but the AI has a lot of instructions with it for you to control it. So I can't smash it into this video. It would be too long. But if people are interested in seeing something similar like this for the solo mode, I'll make it, so let me know. But hopefully this was helpful for anyone out there. Please check out the website at boardgamebreakdown.com. We've got a lot of written reviews. We have other videos up there. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Check us out on Mastodon and Instagram. And thanks for watching.